In recent years, we've witnessed a takeover of keto on social media. The diet has grown in popularity as a way to lose weight, sharpen your focus, and maybe even improve your endurance, all without totally starving or giving up butter and bacon. But before jumping into this latest craze, we should know all the facts, because the keto diet could actually make things worse for you in the long run. The whole point of the keto diet is to put your body into a state of ketosis. Basically, by reducing your carb intake, your body runs out of glucose to use for fuel. Instead, your liver turns fat into a type of acid called ketones, which your muscles and tissues can use to re-energize. This is a totally natural process that helps our bodies survive during times of famine. And it turns out that everyone has ketones. But the idea behind the keto diet is to intentionally put your body in a state of ketosis, often to lose weight and often for long periods of time. To do this, you have to eat a ridiculously tiny amount of sugars and starches in a day, like somewhere in the 20 to 50 gram range, depending on your body, which is less than a chocolate chip cookie. So I could never do it. You then replace those calories with fat and protein, but mostly with fat. Strangely enough, the original keto diet was actually developed for epilepsy patients. Fasting has been used to treat epilepsy for millennia, but in the 1920s, Dr. Russell Wilder came up with a ketogenic diet to help patients fast in a more sustainable way. The great thing about keto is it can help you feel satisfied instead of in a perpetual state of starvation, which can make a massive difference. Since then, other more popular treatments were developed, and keto largely fell out of favor in the clinical setting, although it did continue to be used in some circumstances. But then something happened that changed everything: the Atkins craze. In 1972, cardiologist Dr. Robert Atkins published his Diet Revolution book, in which he proposed a new way of losing weight, reducing carbs while retaining high calorie intake. He totally went against the grain of contemporary thought with his claims that you could lose fat by eating fat. Whatever you think about the Atkins diet, it seemed to work for enough people that it's still in mainstream awareness 50 years later. And it got the world used to the radical idea of low carb, high fat. It got the world used to the radical idea of low-carb, high-fat dieting as a means of losing weight. Doctors started digging more into the topic, and eventually the keto diet resurfaced and found its way onto none other than the Joe Rogan Experience.
That I'm not crazy when I knew I wasn't crazy.
Right. Next thing you know, celebrities like Halle Berry, LeBron James, multiple Kardashians, and Alicia Vikander were trying keto or keto-ish diets, and social media feeds were flooded with impressive before and after shots and enticing meal plans. The people who had sex with keto became die-hard zealots, and it became so mainstream that we now have keto-certified foods in the grocery stores. But many dietary fads come and go, and we have to ask, is this one here to stay, or is it another load of overhyped BS? It's important to note that whenever you're dealing with dietary recommendations, you're dealing with a complex landscape of ever-changing expert opinions that seldom agree with one another and are rarely meant to be a one-size-fits-all. On top of this, there are often financial incentives for people to put forth certain views. The 2021 keto market was valued at $10 billion, and it's expected to grow, which probably affects how influencers talk about it. The gist of the matter is that nobody knows what the perfect diet is because there isn't one. We're all just out here doing our best, trying to figure out what works for our individual bodies. With that said, there are things that make the keto diet appealing. We'll start with the weight loss claims because that seems to be what people care about the most. So we all know that if you want to lose weight, you need to make sure you're burning more calories than you're consuming. A low-carb diet could potentially help with this in a few different ways. Anytime you restrict huge categories of food, you're forcing yourself to be more intentional about what you eat. The next time you're having a wine and cheese night, you might just forego the chocolate and crackers because it doesn't fit with your diet. Generally speaking, restricting food makes overeating more difficult simply because you have fewer options. That buffet is going to be a lot less dangerous if you're faithfully on keto. In particular, by cutting out things like refined sugars, you'll end up unable to consume some of the biggest culprits when it comes to overeating: processed foods. What if I told you that major food companies tailor-make products specifically to keep you hungry? They combine sugar, fat, salt, and texture into a deadly concoction that makes it incredibly easy to eat, say, an entire pack of Oreos without even thinking. Or like multiple McDonald's meals, because you're never really satisfied afterwards. Foods that make your blood sugar spike, that is, high glycemic index foods like refined carbohydrates, are going to make you hungrier and crave more. It makes sense that by removing these from your diet, you can lower your blood sugar levels, help prevent spiking, and help with overeating, type 1 and 2 diabetes, and a host of other issues. I don't think I need to tell you just how horrible a lot of processed foods can be for your health. The keto diet in particular might take this a step further. According to some experts and a plethora of anecdotes, when you're in ketosis, you may end up feeling more satiated. According to Healthline, scientists don't really know why this is yet. It might have something to do with hormones and the fact that ketones seem to have some kind of effect on the brain. But either way, that's going to help you not overeat, and it's gonna feel better. We could spend all day debating the science behind keto, but in the end, it really does seem to help a lot of people lose weight. But so will pretty much any of the other conscientious diets out there. Paleo, keto, vegan, you name it, they all have the potential to do something to your belly fat, if just by virtue of forcing you to think about what you're eating. But for many of us, the worst thing about the keto diet is probably that it's hard. To do keto well, it's not enough to stay within the daily carb limit and keep your body in ketosis. You have to make sure you're getting a variety of vegetables and healthy fats. There's a real risk here of fixating so much on restricting carbs that you end up eating a diet of bacon, butter, and not much else. This is why you hear stories of people having issues with constipation, diarrhea, or nutrient deficiencies while on keto. These issues are usually pretty avoidable, but you have to make sure you're intentional about it and getting plenty of nutrient-dense, fibrous foods. We all want a quick fix, but you don't look like this by merely buying into the latest trend and skipping all the corners. That takes dedication, research, and of course, exercise on top of carb counting. Even if you do things perfectly, it's worth noting that we don't really know the long-term consequences of keto. Low-carb diets have been linked to early death, which is why some doctors say adamantly that you should not go on keto, period, if you're looking for long-term weight management, especially when the animal fat debate is still raging. Many doctors are very concerned about diets high in saturated fats because of possible link to heart disease. So we already talked about how it was used originally as successful treatment for epilepsy. Modern doctors have actually started tinkering with keto as a means to treat other neurological conditions, including multiple sclerosis and Alzheimer's. The research is still pretty new at this stage, so we don't want to get overly excited, but honestly, it sounds pretty cool. Apparently, ketones are a richer fuel supply than glucose, giving them an advantage for neurological conditions where there's poor energy production in the cells. Keto can potentially reduce inflammation, heal nerve impulses in the brain, and help your body get rid of damaging cells like bacteria, viruses, and cancer. This might just be why keto has a reputation for helping people think clearer, even if they're not battling a neurological condition. We're not doctors. We can't tell you if keto can help with whatever you're facing, but it might be worth looking into. Who knows? But of course, there are some things to be wary of. While keto may be helpful in treating some medical conditions, there are others that might not respond so well. If you have kidney, liver, or gallbladder concerns, you might want to think twice about keto. And while there may be some benefits for type 1 and 2 diabetics, there are also some risks here. So in general, it's just not recommended to jump straight into keto without consulting a doctor. That said, nobody said you have to stay on keto forever. Theoretically, there shouldn't be anything inherently dangerous about going keto every so often to reset your system, which is a thing some people swear by. After all, our ancestors were built for periods of famine, often predictable periods that came with the changing seasons. It stands to reason that short bouts of keto might be safe for the majority of us, assuming we don't have complicated health issues. What we know for sure is that this diet is very hard to maintain. If you cheat at all, your body goes out of ketosis, and it's really hard not to cheat when a single pair can take up your entire daily carb limit. You have to carefully calculate how many carbs you're getting in in a day to make sure you stay under your limit, which is just no fun at all. More than many other diets, it's easy to burn out with keto and revert to your old eating habits, which doesn't feel like the worst, but can negatively impact your physical health too. Constantly gaining and losing weight is known as weight cycling and is associated with poorer cardiovascular health. Which brings us to our biggest problem with the keto diet, which is diet culture as a whole. There's this weird mentality floating around that in order to be worth something, we have to look a certain way. Whether or not that culturally constructed perfect image works with our body or lifestyle. In a world obsessed with appearances, food becomes merely a tool for forcing our bodies into a certain mold, which is not a healthy way of approaching things. It's not very motivating, which is probably one of the reasons why most diets fail. Food should serve a greater purpose. It has the ability to improve our quality of life by bringing us joy, pleasure, building communities, and yes, helping us feel our best by improving our health. Obsessing about calories and how you look in the mirror isn't going to improve your quality of life. It might actually open you up to a lot of unnecessary anxiety and shame when you try to force yourself into a restrictive diet. But how much better and possibly more effective would it be to come at that from a place of self-love rather than self-loathing? What if, instead of demonizing certain food groups, we learn to love the ones that support our bodies? And when you start to notice that difference, you might not want to go back to the way things were. The key here is to do something that works for you and your individual needs and goals that you know you can keep up with while still enjoying your food. Maybe you're hardcore and thrive with clear restrictions, but for many of us, it's more sustainable to slowly but surely rebuild our lives. Maybe start by learning a few new recipes for whole, natural foods. You don't have to go full keto to cut out fast food and pick up a squash instead. A balanced, nutrient-dense, wholesome diet is something that all medical professionals can get behind. Whatever you choose, we hope you enjoyed this video. We're just getting started here, so if you give us a like and subscribe, that support will go a long way to keep us going with more content like this.